Commission of March 28, 2017. Roll call, please.
Hickman here.
Grillo here.
Guzikowski here,
Corral here.
Chandler here.
and Mayor Bukowitz is away in Madison today. He could not be here. All right. Significant common council actions. Carrie.
Minutes.
Yeah, we'll go with approval of minutes first.
Okay.
Approval of minutes?
I wasn't here, so.
Fred, your mic's not on.
You're on.
Okay. Seibert moves to approve the minutes of March 14th, 2017 meeting.
Corral seconds.
Roll call?
Hickman abstains.
Grillo, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Corral, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Significant council actions. Carrie?
Council approved the following: an ordinance approving the rezoning of the properties at 331 and 401 East Oak Street from RS2 Single Family Residential to M1 Manufacturing, with a conditional use for a contractor's office, shops, and yards in a condominium development with no outdoor storage. Also, a resolution urging state legislation to close loopholes that shift a greater tax property burden from commercial properties to residential homeowners. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. Moving on to 4A, comprehensive plan amendment. Who's got that one? Pete or Carrie? Carrie.
I'll take that one. First, I'll read the public hearing notice into the record. Official notice of public hearing before the Oak Creek Plan Commission. Purpose of the public hearing is to consider an amendment to the 2020 vision, a comprehensive plan for the city of Oak Creek as it relates to the property at 140 East Rawson Avenue. Hearing date is Tuesday, March 28th, 2017 at 6 p.m. in the Oak Creek City Hall, 8040 South 6th Street, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 53154, Common Council Chambers.
Thank you, Carrie. Now,
Sorry. Part of it is obscured by what what's on my screen here. So we're changing the plan and land use category and map. Pardon. In the comprehensive plan from planned business to planned industrial for the property at 140 East Rawson Avenue. Plan Commission may schedule other public meeting items or public hearings for March 28th, 2017. Hearing may begin at 6 p.m. or as soon as possible following the conclusion of any other public items or meetings. Any persons with questions regarding the proposed changes may call the Department of Community Development at 414-766-7027 during regular business hours. The date of notice is February 16th, 2017. City of Oak Creek Plan Commission. At the time, Steve Scafidi, Mayor. Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Carrie. I'll make 3 calls. Anyone here to speak on this topic? First call. Second call. 3 strikes, we're out. Moving on to 5A. Carrie?
Purpose of the comprehensive plan amendment, if you will recall from the last meeting, or actually a couple meetings ago, there was a proposal for a combined office and industrial warehouse development on the property at 140 East Rawson Avenue. It was discovered that although the property was rezoned appropriately to M1 in 2007, the comprehensive plan was not simultaneously updated to reflect that rezoning. So this is considered a cleanup so that everything is complementary to each other and everything is consistent with each other in terms of zoning, comprehensive plan, and approved plans. Staff's recommendation is that the Plan Commission adopts Resolution 2017-01, amending the comprehensive plan and planned land use map to reflect the change in land use from planned business to planned industrial for the property at 140 East Rawson Avenue, following this public hearing and adoption by the Common Council. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. Plan Commissioners, any questions, concerns, comments?
Pretty clean.
It's a formality.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Make a motion?
Take a motion.
Wally. Corral moves that the commission adopts resolution 2017-01, amending the comprehensive plan and planned use map to reflect the change in land use from planned business to planned industrial for the property at 140 East Rawson Avenue, following a public hearing and adoption by the Common Council.
Seifert seconds.
Chairman, has the public hearing already been held? I'm sorry, I'm late.
Yes, it has. However, Mr. Degner, if you could step up, we'd like to hear what you have to say.
My only concern is the fact that.
Mr.
we've got
Degner,
this
can you,
big-
microphone, please?
Pardon
name
me,
and-
Degner, 8540 South Pennsylvania Avenue. My
you.
big concern is the fact that we've got this big plan coming up the next, but there's no plan for sidewalks on Rawson Avenue. To me, this is an omission, cannot be allowed in our city with the great Aeropolis, and yet there's no sidewalks allowed. And as far as I'm concerned, that is a requirement on any of these cross streets that lead from the county line way over out. There aren't that many streets for us to travel on to go across town, west or east, as well as the delivery. And to have sidewalks, to allow people to use public transportation or without public transportation, because we're going to be loaded with all kinds of apartments. I understand there's another big development going on in Franklin on the other side of 27th Street. You saw it in the paper today. Without sidewalks, how can individuals afford vehicles with this big wheel tax that's coming?
Thank you, Mr. Degner, for your comments. Motion?
Got a motion and a
And a
second. You were
second.
waiting for a vote.
Second.
All right.
So I'll call the
Vote,
question.
Okay, Dickman, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowley.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right, moving on to 5B. Five B is a Plan Commission resolution. Doug's here. Hi, Doug.
Hi. Good evening. Doug Seymour, Director of Community Development. Thank you, Commissioners. Before you this evening is a resolution which requests that the Plan Commission endorse the Milwaukee Aerotropolis Development Plan. Now, the plan, and you should have received a copy of that a few weeks ago. Also provided a link to that. Really provides a guide for a more comprehensive and coordinated development surrounding in the community surrounding General Mitchell International Airport. Talk about Aerotropolis, and Aerotropolis is really a term that was coined by a university professor. It really talks about all the interactions and the different interactions between activities in and surrounding airport areas. If you think of some of the airports that you may have visited in your travels, whether it be Denver or Chicago or Dallas, I mean, there's more to the airport than just happens within the fences. You know, there's logistics, there's hospitality, there's other forms of manufacturing, offices, and things of that nature. And really, within the context of Milwaukee, you really haven't seen a lot of coordination in and around the airport. And that's really been a shame because it's a tremendous economic asset, not only to Milwaukee, and it's operated by Milwaukee County, but for the entire region. And without that, we certainly wouldn't have a lot of the attractiveness that we have as a community in Oak Creek for some of the industrial and commercial development that we have. So I am on the board of the Milwaukee Gateway Aerotropolis Corporation, and on behalf of what was then Mayor Scafidi, I'm not sure if Mayor Bukevich wants to continue that relationship, but that group consists of, I believe it's 7 municipalities surrounding the airport, including Milwaukee County, including the city of Milwaukee, cities of, and I hope I'm getting them all, South Milwaukee, Cudahy, St. Francis, Oak Creek, Franklin, Greenfield, Greendale, and even Hales Corners, which is a little bit further removed from that. But the idea was that by coordinating our efforts and coordinating land uses surrounding the airport, we can really grow that pie as a whole, so that we're not all for instance, trying to get a hotel when a hotel may not make sense in each community, but maybe it makes sense within a hospitality cluster at 13th and College. Or vice versa, when, for instance, if there's something that might better belong in the St. Francis Industrial Park, that we're all not committing resources chasing that one proposal, but that we really coordinate things so that we grow that economic pie and grow the attractiveness of Milwaukee, because we have got a more attractive, more viable airport, and the land uses around that are coordinated. So for the past couple of years, we've been working on a land use plan which kind of coordinates those activities, and it's been a pretty major undertaking. Also involves a number of different private and public sector stakeholders who are also represented on the MGAC, the Aerotropolis Corporation, whether it's the Department of Natural Resources, Department of Transportation. We've also got several members of the real estate development community. So it's a very well-rounded board, and a lot of thought has been put into how to best promote the Milwaukee Airport or Aerotropolis region to really foster economic development in the Milwaukee area as a whole. So with that in mind, and on page 47 of the booklet that you had, it really identifies, actually it's not 47, but it's 46, identifies 6 kind of catalytic areas surrounding the airport that they're focusing kind of these coordinated land use efforts in and around. And they include the Layton Town Center. Oh, I'm sorry, and I don't have this one on my screen, but maybe Carrie does. They include the Layton Town Center area, which is really the area surrounding Howell and Layton, where the old Wyndham Hotel used to be. I think it's now a Wally Park. There's some land surrounding there. The Layton Lake Parkway area, again, kind of in the northeast corner of the airport, communities of Cudahy and St. Francis. The Milwaukee South Industrial area, which we'll talk about, a good portion of that is in Oak Creek, as well as the 13th and 27th Street area, again, involves Oak Creek, and the Oakwood Road area on the far southern portion of the county. There's also a small portion called the Loomis Road area, which is in the kind of northwest corner of that in the city of Greenfield. So my main comments this evening are to say that really the land uses proposed as part of the Aerotropolis Development Plan don't really vary considerably from those that are in the City of Oak Creek Comprehensive Plan. But there are a few exceptions, and I would like to bring those to your attention as part of the discussion of some of those sub-areas that we talked about. First, talking about the Milwaukee South Industrial area. And I don't know if I can just, I got it here too. Here, I got it. Hopefully. Yes? Yeah. So this is the area which is right around the intersection of Howell Avenue, College Avenue, Rawson Avenue, and in the recent past, we've talked about developments here ranging from the Master Lock headquarters, certainly MATC's there. The council and the Plan Commission approved a kind of a flex building development on the former Goodwill property in this area. But I want to just point out a few exceptions that are different from what the city has in its comprehensive plan. And I should note, and you're all well aware, that the city is undergoing a strategic planning process that will lead towards an update to our comprehensive plan. So from that standpoint, there may be others that are associated with the future comprehensive plan update. But for now, I just want to talk about some of these areas that are specific to the Aerotropolis Development Plan.
See, Doug, what page is that, if I might ask? Do you have it there?
I've actually got them on my separate pages, so that is probably,
This is page 1 of the specific report, the staff report.
should be the
Okay,
Milwaukee
staff,
South
okay.
Industrial area. And I know you guys can't see this with the highlights here, so, but we'll kind of talk through it. Area A, which is on your plan, which is, you can see those in the audience. This is the area that, under our city's comprehensive plan, shows as air transportation. And that was really reflective of the master plan for General Mitchell International Airport, which called for a parallel runway in that location, and has for some time now. Now, for a number of factors, it's been explained to us that parallel runway probably will not be included as part of the next master plan, which is going to be taking place this coming year. So as part of that, they're proposing that parallel runway be eliminated. So that really opens up a number of different things, not only in the city of Oak Creek, but in other areas surrounding the airport. Whereas the Aerotropolis Board, the sewer pack, which is the one who we worked very closely with in drafting this plan, showed that these newly reclassified areas would be more appropriate for mixed-use commercial development. And the only thing I'd note with respect to that is when we're talking about the area just north of MATC, we'd like to see certainly mixed-use commercial and residential development would be appropriate, but I think we'd like to have more of an industrial focus to that, more of a logistics focus to that area. And I'll just run through these, and then maybe after each section, we'll kind of stop and take a breather and kind of talk about some of the specifics for each of these individual areas. A B on your sheet, which is kind of the area on the southeast corner of Howell Avenue and College Avenue, under the existing comp plan that calls for planned industrial and planned business. Just a minor and technical nature there. There is a cemetery there that we'd like to, obviously, it's not developable. We just need to show it on the plan as an open space or institutional use. Item C, which is the area on the southwest corner of Pennsylvania Avenue and College Avenue, which was the site, if you'll recall, for that the post office had proposed building on. Under our plan is called for planned business and mixed residential. And the Aerotropolis plan, it calls for a mix of industrial, commercial, and mixed residential. The one thing I would note there is that those types of mixed uses are appropriate. Again, probably be more of an industrial and business type of use with some retail possibly at that corner. But right in this kind of orange area that you see right by the letter C, they're showing that as kind of mixed residential. That actually is a park area. So it's kind of just an error on the map that we want to see corrected as part of that. Area D on the map, again, one of those little minor things. That's an electrical substation. We just want to highlight that. It's not available for development. Item E on the map, that's over here, and I think it got cut off in here. But we show on our future land use map for the comprehensive plan an awful lot of planned office. And our experience over the past several years has shown us that the office market, the speculative office market in Oak Creek just is not there. And certainly while you have build-to-suit users such as Master Lock there, I mean, that really hasn't extended beyond some of those one-off deals. So with that in mind, we would looking for a designation of more industrial and commercial, again, recognizing the fact that the office market is somewhat limited in this area. Section F, which is the area south of the main north-south runway, that shows as air transportation in the city's existing land use plan. One of the things that Milwaukee County is doing right now, it's making available lands within the actual ownership of the airport that aren't absolutely required to be open space, making that available for industrial and commercial development. So under the Aerotropolis plan, you'll see that that's designated for industrial development, certainly with some restrictions, but again, making available these areas that heretofore hadn't been available for development. And area G, which is on the kind of the southeast corner of Howell Avenue and Rawson Avenue, again, one of those instances where the city, and when we did our comprehensive plan, identified those areas as planned office. And you'll see an awful lot of orange on this map and in our comprehensive plan. And really, at that point in time, at the urging of the airport, really urging of the county, these areas were designated office because the county did not really want them to be developed as residential, given what were some of the noise impacts from the airport. So that's why you see a lot of office in that area. Again, office is not probably going to, the market's not going to be supportive of that much office, so that we'd probably be scaling that back into a more industrial or commercial area. So this is the Milwaukee South industrial area. Happy to take any questions, any comments that you have with respect to this area.
I want to ask one question. If you're looking at the two pictures, the picture on the left, it says figure error. That's the Oak Creek side?
Yeah, that's the existing comprehensive plan.
Plan?
Yep.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So are we looking to change the existing comprehensive plan for Oak Creek to reflect the suggestions for the Aerotropolis plan?
Ultimately, yes, this action by the commission and ultimately the action by the common council that would follow this does not by itself change that. We would still need to go through the comprehensive plan amendment process, much like the property that you just went through on Rawson Avenue. So this would be a step towards that direction, but it would not in and of itself change the comprehensive plan.
Else?
I just have a question on the airport development plan where they have that area F that's in white. Can you give a little more explanation on that development or what they're trying to accomplish? I
So
thought
for,
at
and
one
I know you
time-
can't see this, so when you're talking about
F and the development A, yeah,
No,
this portion right here. That part is city of Milwaukee,
that's correct, yep,
so we have nothing to do with that.
that's correct.
Okay, I thought maybe
And
that
that,
was,
and that's actually the runway safety area itself, so that's kind of a no-touch area.
I thought at one time that was no development, or there was because of the airport.
Right,
and
I'm going to correct myself, that's not the city of Milwaukee, that is the city of Oak Creek, but that is the runway safety area.
So that, I recall back, that was for future runway development and expansion.
No, that's the runway safety area for the north-south runway.
Well, yeah,
so that F, Doug, that pertains to that blue area there, right?
Yep,
Not the white area?
That's
Okay,
correct.
The little white area, okay, yeah.
Any other questions? Where are we going next, Doug?
we are going to the 13th and 27th Street area. And this area encompasses, considerably more than just the city of Oak Creek and involves both the city of Milwaukee, city of Franklin, and a portion of the city of Greenfield. Breaking it down, letter A is the area surrounding the southwest corner of College Avenue and 13th Street. This is really the hospitality campus that exists in the city of Oak Creek. A lot of the airport area hotels within the city are located in this district. So we show that on the existing comp plan, aside from the hotels, of course, as industrial. So I think barricade flashers there, you see there's kind of a scattering of parcels. Some are vacant, some are underutilized. The plan itself is calling for commercial and really recognizing that this has become the hospitality cluster surrounding the airport and making that available for additional hospitality and commercial uses. Section B, which is in this area, it shows just the existing mobile home park that's there. It shows that possibly transitioning towards a residential commercial mixed use. Again, you could talk about that, but it really acknowledges that maybe that's not the highest and best use for that area. Section C, which is the properties.
Excuse me, Doug, real quick, just to clarify, best use of that area meaning residential?
Mixed use, residential, commercial, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. So area C is the area, the existing residential areas along Drexel Avenue in the vicinity of IKEA. And this map, for some reason, is not translating very, very good the PDF. You can see these areas around item C here, they're shown as residential. The Aerotropolis plan identifies those potentially as converting towards more planned mixed use, similar to certainly what's happening on the IKEA property and the property surrounding that. Area D, which is in the southwest corner of Rawson Avenue and 13th Street, at the edge of the North Branch Industrial Park. Our comprehensive plan shows that as planned industrial. The Aerotropolis plan shows that as commercial, and it really recognizes that kind of extending that commercial intersection at 13th and Rawson. Certainly the the bulk of that will remain primarily industrial, but recognizing that there are opportunities along the corner itself for commercial activity, and really one of those, you've seen that a little bit already with some of the kind of quasi-commercial business and industrial that you're seeing there with the Flag Center, for example. Area E, which is the area at the southeast corner of 13th Street and Drexel Avenue, on our comprehensive plan shows a single-family residential. Also shows some two-family residential and planned mixed use in that area. The Aerotropolis plan calls for commercial mixed use and commercial mixed use residential. Again, along the intersection there, just recognizing that there may be additional development that takes place in and around the intersection of Drexel Avenue and 13th Street that the market may at some point dictate that some of those residential properties may convert over to commercial or business properties. That is the 13th and 27th Street area. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yep.
In regards to section B,
Yep.
so the way that I understand this, there are mobile homes in that area already?
Yes,
And with mobile homes, that's considered residential?
it is. It's certainly a more dense form of residential on the scale of single family and multifamily and kind of a different classification. Yes, but it is residential.
So when we say commercial residential, what does that mean? exactly?
Certainly an area that typically is held under single ownership or larger parcels that may convert over to a multifamily use or a retail use.
Yet the homes that are there presently can remain? Is that what that
Certainly,
means?
as is the case in any of these
Oh, okay.
these land uses. I mean, many times there's a disconnect between zoning and land use. I mean, land use is kind of the ultimate based on the community's goals and objectives. I mean, the zoning reflects or is reflective of the current use of the property in most cases. And it's not unusual to have a comprehensive plan designation which is different from the existing zoning and the existing use.
So then the zoning would exclude these homes if it changes? Is that,
If the council were to ultimately change the planned land use to a planned business or a mixed use, and if the property was zoned for that, and the only reason it would be zoned for that is if there was a proposal by the owner of those properties to change that, then you're right, then it's likely that mobile homes would not be permitted.
okay. And then section E, so based on the notes, so is this area already designated as commercial?
No, those corners, and the corners around 13th and Drexel are not. And if you just take a look at, for instance, the farmhouse that's there on the
Residential.
southwest corner, that's own residential. We show that we show that as kind of a two-family residential on our land use map. That's recognizing that potentially could convert over to a commercial use.
Thank you.
Doug, I'm just trying to look at, not so much here, but the relationship between our comprehensive plan and this plan. Which has got higher standing, shall we say?
Oh, our comprehensive plan, definitely. This plan is I put it as more than a suggestion. It's really putting out the intent of the communities in kind of endorsing a unified development scheme surrounding the airport. But the plan itself has no force of law whatsoever. I mean, it's the comprehensive plan, it's the zoning and the individual member municipalities that govern the activities on the sites.
So it's a suggested guide, whereas the comprehensive plan is, I would say, more of a guide.
Well, the comprehensive plan is more than a guide.
Well, what we adhere to, let's put it that way.
It is by statute, all land use decisions and zoning decisions that a community makes must be in concert with its comprehensive plan.
That drives, the comp plan drives the direction you're
Yes.
going in. This here is more of a vision,
Yes,
if I'm understanding
definitely.
it correctly.
Okay.
But if you, what you said, I think earlier, Doug, good question, Wally. So the Aerotropolis plan, which seems to blend a little bit more commercial into what's existing residential for us, is a direction that our comprehensive plan in the future is going to head.
That's a likely
Okay,
scenario.
closer to
yes.
matching up.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
So,
Next.
the Oakwood Road area at the far southwest portion of the city, 27th Street, the freeway, future Elm Road interchange, 13th Street. Under Area A,
Doug, could I ask a question? You just
may.
have, the future Elm Road interchange, I thought that was cut out of the plan by the state.
no, it's in the plan, it's not been funded.
Oh, that's,
And it's actually in the plan, again, we talked about this morning, for 2019, but again, the funding is not, I mean, until they fund it, it's on hold.
well, if I look at the road plan for the state right now, it looks like it's a long way off, I would
Hopefully 2019.
think, hopefully.
Hopefully Ryan Road's taken care
I mean,
of before.
right, and
Elm
that's,
Road
and that's actually on the plans for 2018. But again, funding is going to dictate when those projects happen.
Correct.
Thank you. So the areas that are adjacent to the interstate in Area A, and particularly kind of at the right adjacent to the interstate at Oakwood Road, we show that on our existing comprehensive plan as single-family residential. The Aerotropolis plan shows it as mixed-use commercial and residential. And probably in the grand scheme of things, probably not a great area for single-family subdivision, so that's probably appropriate to show that as a mixed-use district. Area B, again, St. Stephen's existing church property, just want to make sure that we show that on our future land use map as institutional, and they in fact do show that on the Aerotropolis map.
And St. Stephen's does own the cemetery on Howland College
Oh, okay.
at St. Joseph's.
Can't make it the same name, just make it easier.
They actually have two on Howell Avenue. One's in Milwaukee.
So Area C is the area around this future planned Elm Road interchange. And a note about the Elm Road interchange, as part of the state project, the Elm Road interchange would be put in, ironically, at Elm Road, and would connect to 27th Street via a state highway to the west. Now, should the city wish to connect that to 13th Street to the east, that'd be a city project, and that'd be a future decision by the Common Council. But the lands surrounding that area are shown, are mostly undeveloped, and are shown as planned industrial. And the Aerotropolis plan, again, envisions this as a more catalytic area, and including the areas both in Oak Creek and Franklin that would be suitable for business park development. I think we would probably look as a community that, while mixed use certainly is appropriate, we would be looking for more of a business park or corporate park in this area, and probably not residential. And D is the area which is on Oakwood Road between Howell Avenue and 13th Street. Currently shows as planned industrial on our future land use map. This is the area which is just north of the Oakview Business Park, just south of the Oakwood Crossing Business Park. Just in the news lately, as FedEx has been granted approval to operate just north of there. We show that as converting long-term over to planned industrial in our future land use map. The Aerotropolis map still acknowledges that as single-family residential. We probably should show that as future business, future industrial, to be consistent with our land use map, recognizing that, again, in the long term, and provided that there's coordinated development of those properties, that probably residential zoning is not the highest and best use there. Questions or comments about the Oakwood Road area?
Commissioner Chandler?
I just have a question. So just for clarity, so the section C and D, the recommendation is to keep it as the existing Oak Creek Comprehensive Plan?
Well, I think we're okay with that mixed-use designation specifically for Area C, but we just want to note as part of the plan that our intent is for a business park or corporate park there, not necessarily a mixed-use plan that doesn't necessarily focus on residential, but focuses on the business park aspect.
And that's for both C and,
And area D, which is again the Oakwood Road properties, we believe that that should just be planned industrial.
thank you.
Anything else from anybody? Commissioner Dickman?
I just want to add, in the plan itself, at the end of each section, it says, like here, example, City of Oak Creek Comprehensive Plan, and it gives a couple of ideas there. I know that we probably already implement some of those, probably based on, you go in those meetings, but are we going to be looking at these as we go ahead on the comprehensive plan also, some of their recommendations?
Certainly we'll take under advisement any of the recommendations of this plan, and certainly if the Plan Commission Council pass resolutions in support of that, we would look to incorporate those in future drafts of the plan.
Anybody else? Commissioner
The only other
Chandler?
comment I have is we still have flexibility if we want to rezone, if something does come in like industrial to commercial.
Remember that any rezoning or any land use actions by the city must be consistent with its comprehensive plan. So you do have flexibility within the aspect of how you set your comprehensive plan. But for instance, if someone came in on a property that was shown as residential on the future land use map but wanted to put a business park there, that's something you could not do. You'd have to first change the comprehensive plan.
I'm kind of looking at IKEA, how we've changed and zoned some of that property. If we had the similar thing along the expressway, do we have that flexibility to vary a little bit from the,
Only insofar as you have the ability to change your comprehensive plan.
right, I mean, we changed that
Yes.
too, but you do have that, still that flexibility
Yes.
if it's not quite in agreement with Milwaukee.
Right, I mean, it's your comprehensive plan that governs. And to the extent, if the council says, I want to make, that area mixed use or commercial or industrial, they can certainly do that after going through a public process for amending its comprehensive plan.
We have the comprehensive plan.
That's the key I look at, is the
Yeah.
comprehensive plan is our city.
Yep,
Okay, Doug, we are constantly updating our comprehensive plan, which we want to do by law, we should. This particular plan, are there any plans in place to try to keep this updated or changed, or you're on that committee, I was wondering what they're.
right, and the corporation has been in existence for several years now, and it certainly, as with any good plan, we would revisit the plan to make sure that the conditions, we don't want to change the plan every year, because then it's not a plan, then it's a zoning document. But, if at intervals, there are market conditions or other factors which dictate that we revisit some of these areas, I think the corporation and its member and the stakeholders and members' communities would be open to revisiting the plan, should the need arise.
Commissioner Chandler?
Yeah,
Outside
sure.
Okay, so can you provide a little more information about the Elm Road interchange?
Sure. As we talked about, the Elm Road interchange was part of a mainline north-south reconstruction and expansion project by the Department of Transportation, which honestly would have been completed by now had funding proceeded along as it had been intended. Those improvements would be included major reconstructions of the interchanges at College, Ross, and Bryan. It included, at the city's request and participation, the Drexel Avenue interchange. It included adding additional capacity to the main line, the lanes within the city of Oak Creek. Also included taking a look at the half interchange, which is at County Line Road presently, and it would have been cost prohibitive and more environmentally impactful had they tried to do a full interchange at Elm Road. That's why they proposed to move that north to Elm Road. Again, originally could have been installed by now. Funding didn't make that possible. It is on the books for 2019.
Several times throughout this document, it is referred to funding issues need to be addressed. What does that mean exactly for Oak Creek? Or is that outside of Oak Creek?
Well, I mean, where it relates to certainly with infrastructure projects, you can see how that relates towards certainly I-94. If there are individual projects such as business parks within the member communities or for instance, the Layton Town Center area in Milwaukee, certainly those do not come cheap. There are infrastructure and other costs associated with development, much as they are for the developments that we've seen in Oak Creek. And I think it really recognizes that and sees the authority and the responsibility of the member communities and stakeholders to develop the financing and implementation plans to really implement these plans.
Then also, so with these changes to our plan, so overall, what's the financial impact to Oak Creek?
Honestly, I'll answer that in two ways. The changes to our comprehensive plan as proposed in this, they're not, in my estimation, significant. I think they're really building upon the concepts and the direction that the city's been taking with respect to how it really capitalizes on its infrastructure assets and surrounds the airport, surrounds the interstates. But from the standpoint that it really coordinates and focuses development in these 6 or 7 critical areas, I think that it really positions Oak Creek very well to kind of capitalize upon the General Mitchell International Airport and that Aerotropolis area as a way to really promote development in the region, which only helps Oak Creek.
And another question, now with changing some of our zoning, so have the surrounding areas been evaluated? Meaning, are some of these duplicates? Like we have quite a few changing to, or potentially being revised to commercial residential. So are there other areas around this area that are similar?
Well, I mean, there are certainly areas outside of these catalytic areas. I mean, the lines were drawn somewhat arbitrarily just to focus on the kind of the predominantly open and developable areas in and around these specific sites. You could extend that further into the neighborhoods, for example. It was just, you had to draw that line someplace, and that's where they chose to do it.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just
Commissioner
have
Sieber?
another question about arterial streets and highways going through Oak Creek, which they're talking about. Will that have an effect on some of our planning also?
It does, and I think one thing in particular I would note is that the long-range transportation plans do call for, again, finishing off the interstate system in the main line, which hopefully is not that long-term of a plan. But what I will also note is that the DOT has its current, I think on their 6-year plan, they show proposed changes to their arterial. So this really dovetails into a similar region-wide comprehensive planning process that the Regional Planning Commission has undertaken with the assistance and with the cooperation of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation to really analyze what major transportation improvements and land use changes may need to be made over the next 20 to 30 years. And how that really impacts Oak Creek, I think we've got a strong arterial network, state highway network, and really kind of really expanding that when demand warrants to really keep up with capacity issues. But the one thing which I would draw your attention to, and one thing which I think this Plan Commission and Common Council had reviewed several years ago, is a planned extension of the Lake Parkway south from its current terminus at just south of Layton Avenue down to potentially to Highway 100. And while that is part of the plan, it should be noted that this is, while it's part of the regional plan, it is a long ways off. It is not funded in any way, shape, or form. And the DOT has explicitly said that this is not funded. It's just something that appears on our plan for the next 23 years. And we'd have to have that serious funding discussion should traffic and community support warrant that.
Okay, done.
Christian Chandler?
Yep, I have another question. Okay, so one thing, or another thing, I noticed that the freight transportation is not changing, so that's remaining the same. Yet there, I didn't see specific details about the bicycle and pedestrian routes. So are there any changes there that impact Oak Creek?
Well, keep in mind that this is not a substitute for our comprehensive plan or other park and open space plan, but this focuses on the overall high altitude view of our land use. Certainly, and I certainly agree with Mr. Degner that sidewalks and trail systems are a critically important part of how we as a community really intend to grow and to refine our transportation network. So from that standpoint, we've always been in agreement that we need to have a comprehensive trail and sidewalk policy. But that is probably more accurately reflected in local plans, such as the comprehensive plan, such as the capital improvements plan, such as the park and open space plan. One thing I will note, and you mentioned freight transportation, hugely important part of this concept of Aerotropolis. And Oak Creek certainly has 3 railroads which run through it. The Aerotropolis area has the Port of Milwaukee. And there's also discussion about oversized, overweight vehicles and how they move throughout the region and connect the Milwaukee area to the rest of the world. And Pete's actually been serving on a task force that examines how we deal with oversized, overweight vehicles and transportation routes. So while it's a hugely important part of the Aerotropolis plan, I don't know that it really changes things from Oak Creek's perspective.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dickman.
Not on that section. At the end, I have a question.
But another quick question I just thought of. Green space, have we taken into consideration? I know we try to have like 30% green space. Have they taken green space in consideration in this Milwaukee program?
I mean, where green space functions as a regional land use, Falk Park, some of the local parks and parkways, trail systems such as the former North Shore right-of-way, Oak Leaf Trail, those are the things you'll tend to see in these higher level plans and regional plans. Things which are more aptly governed at the local level, such as percentage green space on a site plan, those you would not see in here. Yet they're, while important, again, that's just something that's more appropriate for a higher and more refined level of review by the individual municipalities.
I was referring to like parks, you know, that we've added and so forth. How do they rate that, you know, because we've got various little parks throughout the area.
Certainly, if there were areas which are or were more appropriately designated as parks within these catalytic areas, they would show them on there. Again, you know, probably as part of an overall Aerotropolis plan, which and really does have more of a focus on the development side of things, as opposed to local comprehensive plans, which have a more of a balanced focus to it. I think that you'll see that it's mostly reflective of those areas which are suitable for commercial, industrial, residential development, and not really focused on those areas which are suitable for parkland.
This is a kind of a holistic look. They're just trying to get there.
And I understand, but, you know, green space is important
Oh,
to us,
absolutely.
which primarily are parks and so forth.
And let me maybe perhaps give you an example of that. I mean, the area that we showed as part of the earlier maps, as part of the Milwaukee South Industrial Area, that's section F, which is the runway safety area. In that area right now, you've got the dog park. You've got I think a foot soccer field, is that correct? You've got a golf driving range. I mean, if we as a community thought that, you know, we really believe that this area should remain open space, whether it's through these leases, like for the driving range, for the community gardens or what have you. I mean, that's entirely appropriate. And if that's the way the community feels about that, we should certainly make that comment as part of this Aerotropolis development plan.
Thank you.
Where do we go next, Doug?
Wally had a question.
Yeah, but this is at the end of this whole thing.
I think we're at the end.
Okay, let me try it. Okay, this is the question. I was looking at the comparison, which I found very interesting, of the other national cities, you know, their Aerotropolis examples. And I was looking at Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The thing that really, I was looking at some that were comparable, you know, I mean, not obviously not Dallas or Atlanta, but I looked at Milwaukee and I was not concerned, but interested at the freight-only cargo, and it's 100,000 pounds, it's 1,430. Okay, then I look at another one that's close to us, which is Indianapolis, and they're all the way up to 24,251. And I'm wondering, somehow shouldn't our airport, and it's not part of this plan, but shouldn't our airport be looking at trying to get more cargo volume through there?
Well, I think they certainly are. We're a victim of geography in the sense that we're 70 miles away from arguably is one of the largest airports in the world, which handles a great deal of freight, which is really connected more closely with the multimodal network, whether it's rail or freight. And even airports such as in Indianapolis. Indianapolis has a major UPS facility there. Well, it's always going to be a goal of the airport, and certainly the communities in which the airport serves, is to grow its ability to accommodate the freight needs of its local industries. It's difficult to control that given the geography that we've been dealt with.
With the new FedEx terminal, would that be adding more volume, you think, to the airport?
Not to the airport, no.
Not to the airport.
So if there are no questions, I'd certainly urge you to, if you felt so inclined, to pass the resolution in support of this document this evening, recognizing that we will, if there are specific areas that, for instance, you wanted to see changed in there, that we would forward that on to the Common Council for their consideration as part of a similar resolution. And with that, I thank you for your attention. Good discussion. And whether it's tonight or in the weeks that follow, if you have any questions about that, please feel free to contact me.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay, Dickman's make a motion, the Plan Commission approve resolution number 2017-02 endorsing the Milwaukee Aerotropolis Development Plan. Oh, go ahead.
So for that final page, those last two, which were supporting our existing plan, do we take that out of there?
What I would suggest in that, we're kind of aware of the things that, if you are certainly in agreement with some of those language changes, we would incorporate that into the draft that we refer back to the Common Council and ultimately back to the Aerotropolis Corporation.
Are you comfortable with that?
We need a second.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Dickman, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Alrighty, on to 5C, plan review. Carrie?
The applicant Applied Plastics is looking for approval of modifications to the west elevation of the existing building at 7320 South 6th Street. The elevations currently show windows that are slightly larger than what's being proposed. So existing is on the top of this particular sheet here, and then proposed is on the bottom. It doesn't show up very well, but what I'm going to do is just explain what the changes are and then show you a few photos. Essentially, they're going to be replacing the existing windows, that storefront entry door, and the existing louvers with smaller of the in-kind. So smaller windows, smaller entry doors, smaller louvers, and then infill those areas that currently have windows that will not be replaced with in-kind with single score CMU block to match the existing building. Now, the reason that they're doing this is because they are currently experiencing failures of those window elements. They did not consider fluted CMU and instead are proposing the single score, which is on the building existing, because they actually led to the existing failure that they're trying to deal with and repair. But unfortunately, this proposed material, while it does match the building, doesn't meet the minimum qualifications in our code for approved building materials, so it will need a 3/4 majority approval of the Plan Commission tonight. To give you an idea of what they're dealing with here, this is the existing building. They're showing the fluted CMU accent, and then they're showing you what the windows look like now. Existing, this will be replaced with smaller. But this is actually what they're dealing with in terms of the damage. There's significant cracks that are forming around each of the windows, and the windows are failing. So that's what they're trying to prevent by using this different material. And if you have any further questions, one of the applicant's representatives is here to answer those. Staff's recommendation, however, is that the Plan Commission approves the building plan submitted by Applied Plastics for the property at 7320 South Sixth Street with the condition that all building and fire codes are met. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. Any questions?
I'd like to ask Carrie, do any of our documents right now, that we say what's good materials to use, do they call out that fluted CMU? 'Cause it's the first time I've heard of this, and it's failing in this instance.
It's decorative block or split face. It doesn't call for the
fluid.
single score or for smooth face. So it's,
In
we
between.
do allow CMU, but not necessarily the particular type of CMU that they're proposing. But again, this is a building from the 70s. It's already on the building.
Yeah, that's true.
We have a rendering, we don't have anything that shows what it's gonna, you see what they look like now, but we don't really have, or did I miss that? What it's gonna look like, just that, what you put up on the screen.
We just have the elevation, but what you can kind of, what you can imply from these is that the blocks that you kind of see on the left-hand side where you see the CS from the sign,
Right.
that'll kind of look what the infill will be.
Last elevation.
I'm fine with that. I don't think, it's not beautiful to begin with, so what we're changing is, it's an older building. It is what it is.
Hard to match the materials from
Commissioner,
that. I'm just saying, it's hard to match the material similar to what they have now.
I mean, yeah, you could put in a decorative block, but I mean, they are trying to match what's on the building existing, so.
I go along with
Commissioner Chandler?
I do have a question for the applicant.
Name and address.
My name is Don Jankowitz. I'm representing Applied Plastics.
So can you provide a little more information on, with changing the windows, if that will help this issue from occurring in the future?
Actually, there's very little support underneath the upper portion of the building there. We're proposing to reinforce a lower area, build up the block all the way to the top, and reinforce the existing area where all those cracks are.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Motion?
Correll moves that the commission approves the building plan submitted by Applied Plastics for the property at 7320 South Sixth Street with the condition that all building and fire codes are met.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
All right.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye?
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. Moving on to 5D. Zoning text amendment. Carrie.
Okay, I don't actually have any images for this because it would apply to all of the M1 districts. So what I'm going to do is just give you an idea of what the proposal is. Essentially, we received an application for dog training in an existing multi-tenant building in an M1 district. And dog obedience training is listed as an allowed use in a couple of districts in the city, B2, and then 2 overlay districts that would affect 27th Street. So unfortunately, this particular use is not allowed in the M1 district. But there's a caveat to that. Animal hospitals and boarding kennels are both allowed uses in the M1 district, just not dog obedience or doggy daycare type facilities. And then the caveat to that is we already have something similar in 2 instances in the M1 district. So we have, but both of those facilities were a kennel facility. So it got in under that kind of category rather than just a dog obedience. So there's no boarding that would be proposed in what the amendment is before you for your consideration. And that's where we have this disconnect. And there is one question, and if you don't know the examples I'm talking about, one of them is Central Bark, which is like a doggy daycare play area, and they do have a boarding facility. And that's in North Branch. And then also the former puppy playground, which was on Liberty. They also had kennel facilities and they had a grooming facility, but they're no longer in business. But again, both of those were in an M1 district. So there is one question that we have before the Plan Commission. It's not just should we consider dog obedience training. Question came from the applicant that I'm speaking about, her attorney asking whether or not that's too narrow and rigid of a category, whether that should be left more vague. Instead of saying dog obedience, do we just say dog training? And the other question that I would like the Plan Commission to consider is should we either create a definition or should we expand it to also include such things as doggy daycare facilities? We're already covered in the M1 with having the kennel and the animal hospital, but we don't have anything about a dog or an animal recreation, doggy daycare kind of facility, and again, the dog obedience or the dog training. And the reason that we had dog obedience training specifically is to be consistent throughout the code, because dog obedience training as a category is listed in the allowed B2 and then the overlay districts that we talked about. So some things for the Plan Commission to consider. Staff is proposing this so that we have consistency throughout the code, but we're also open to including all of these uses because we already kind of have those similar uses, so we want to be consistent throughout the code. So if we can have a little bit of a discussion surrounding those particular areas, whether or not we expand the use and whether or not we include a definition. Staff's recommendation is that the Commission recommends to the Council that Section 17.0317 sub C of the Municipal Code be amended to allow dog obedience training facilities with the caveat that that might be changed as conditional uses in the M1 manufacturing district after a public hearing. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie.
Like,
Yes.
I guess for start, it's kind of confusing because we've got some of this in already. It looks like we're kind of splitting hairs amongst the use.
The caveat is the kenneling facility. Kenneling facilities are allowed as conditional uses in the M1. There's no kenneling facility that's being proposed with this particular use, which is why when going through the rest of the code, we look at dog obedience training, which is more closely related to what the proposal is, but that's not allowed in M1 as a category. So for consistency's sake, the proposal was to allow dog obedience training as its own separate category in M1.
Well, with that, I mean, I certainly support that because I think, quite frankly, the dog training as a more general description is more fitting. It actually fits better than, is less of a concern than the kenneling, which we're already allowing. So I think it just makes sense, but I would go with the broader description.
And would you also support adding doggy daycare, whatever that definition may be?
Again, because it combines so many of the different uses in some of these and not knowing who's coming next, I would add it. I would consider it the same.
Commissioner Sieber?
And I kind of agree with Pat. I think if we combine some of that and we put it all under dog care, then it's a lot easier to handle. You start having individuals and it just kind of adds, makes it looks messy. If we can condense it and put it under one heading.
Well, I wouldn't recommend incorporating dog obedience training or like a doggy daycare or grooming facility as a lumped category with the existing animal hospital and kennel category. I would keep the two separate, but I agree with you with lumping the obedience, the doggy daycare, perhaps even a grooming component to it,
Right.
separate.
I agree.
But in all cases, it'll come before us anyways.
As a conditional use,
As a
that's
conditional
correct.
use. So we do
That's
have
what we're
some,
proposing.
so we have some control of it anyways.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's amazing.
Commissioner Chandler?
Question for the applicant.
I was
Well,
going to
actually,
actually,
the applicant right now is the city. We're the ones who are proposing that this proposed amendment to the comprehensive plan be reviewed. The applicant that is bringing this to my attention is actually an applicant for a conditional use permit. So,
So let me ask my question, and that'll determine who
sure,
answers.
go ahead.
So we're trying to the request from the applicant was to not be so specific and just call it obedience, but to also call it training. What's the difference?
The difference is training could be something other than obedience. It could be, for instance, you're going to train the dog to catch a frisbee versus you're going to train the dog to sit, stay, come, those kinds of things. It's more of a broad category. I think that they were concerned that they would be pigeonholed into just doing commands rather than something more recreational.
We need to be able to have them run a business, I think.
So why do we have obedience training? Isn't
It's
it
a-
just training?
It's a carryover category that was in the code from years ago. It's only allowed in the B2 and the overlay districts. It's that category that was created. Now, this would be a little bit different no matter what we do, because I did not recommend that the facility be located in, and conducted entirely within an enclosed building. And that's what the other districts require now. I don't think that's actually appropriate, and I don't think that's actually feasible. You need to have some place for instance, the dog pet relief area. That may not always be feasible in an indoor facility. If you're going to have dog obedience training, or if you're going to have any other kind of training, sometimes an exterior facility may be appropriate. If we don't say that we have that flexibility, even in a conditional use situation, we wouldn't be allowed to have any kind of outdoor facility. So that's why I'm proposing not including that particular caveat that is in other districts.
Thank you.
Gary,
Commissioner Dickman.
based on the discussion which they had, like Pat talked about, your staff recommendation here, does it fit the way it's worded, or would we have to change that under obedience training? 'Cause I
You would
thought-
have to change it if you wanted to expand it or make it more lenient.
Okay, what's your recommendation then? So somebody can say, I
You could
agree
say,
with it.
you could say something like dog training facilities, dog daycare facilities, grooming facilities.
Either one of those or all of them?
I would say all of them.
Okay.
Commissioner Carrillo.
Are we limiting it by saying dog and not pet?
What other kind of pet would you train in a facility? Are you thinking like cats or
Cats.
something like that?
Pigs?
What about
Well,
goldfish?
But to your point, I understand where you're going with this. The problem is we only allow farm animals in the A1 district. We couldn't do any kind of other training in the M1 district. So for instance, you couldn't say, I'm going to have an equestrian training facility in an M1 district. No, you'd have to be in an A1 district.
Oh, birds.
But couldn't birds be included in this category?
I would think you would want to say dogs first and foremost, and if somebody were to bring a proposal to the city to have some kind of pigeon training facility or something like that, we would address it at that time.
Yeah, I was thinking about
Seriously?
that.
Well,
Yeah.
they do have those kinds of things.
Yeah.
You know, they do train like racing pigeons, and they do have those kinds of facilities, but I think that's probably few and far between. Dog training, more ubiquitous.
I did just see an article, and honestly, that said that cats can be trained.
They can be trained.
Yeah,
I
I
have
just
two of
read
them at
that.
home that are
Yeah.
very well trained.
Okay.
Don't believe everything you read.
But I would never take them to a facility to try and
Yeah,
train
not-
them.
yeah, no.
But would you take them to a cat
No.
care, doggy care?
I
cat
personally
daycare?
don't want to kennel my cats. But again, we have kenneling as a separate category in the M1 district. That's not limited to
Right, because they would be in the
dogs.
hospital. I mean, they would be,
Well, you can have a kennel facility that's not also a hospital.
okay. So kennel, as it's written, doesn't say dog kennel.
No, it does
It just
not.
says kennel.
It just says kennel facility.
Okay.
Going back to what I said earlier, in order to make it easier for us, could you just restate what the staff recommendation would be, and then we can agree with it or not?
Proposed staff recommendation that the commission recommends to the common council that section 170317 sub C of the municipal code be amended to allow dog training facilities, grooming facilities, and dog daycare type facilities as conditional uses in the M1 manufacturing district after a public hearing.
That sounds good. I'll make that motion.
Correll will second that motion.
Good job,
Getting
Wally.
lazy while you're gone, Wally.
Roll call, please.
I saw that coming.
Let's see, Dickman, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Corell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you very much. One other thing that is not on the agenda, I'd just like to introduce you all to our new planning intern. This is Bo Bernhoft. He's just started with us this week, so you may be seeing a little bit more of him or seeing some correspondence from him. We're very excited to have him on our staff, and feel free to tease him, as we will. No,
Welcome.
we're welcoming him to the city, and if you would like to have some further discussion with him, he will be here after the meeting.
What was the name again? I'm sorry, Karen.
Bo Bernhoft.
Oh, okay. Glad to have you.
Is your motorcycle in the basement?
Not yet.
Motion to adjourn.
Carrillo moves to adjourn at 7:11.
Guzekowski seconds.
Dickman, aye.
Carrillo, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Corell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you all for watching. Have a good night.